So I was thinking that we also seem to be in an immense era of nostalgia and retrospection, and in the rock world, there's reunion tours galore, and so I was thinking if Midnight Notes was on a reunion tour, what would the greatest hits be? What would the songs be that we'd all demand they sung? And I don't know. I wasn't able to put together a set list, and I certainly don't want to be a tour manager on that. Although it would be neat to have Midnight Notes 30 T-shirts to complement the weekend, but certainly along the way. And again, this is stuff that these are certain key concepts and analyses that Craig and Team Colors pointed to in their letter. But there's a handful of things that I think are continually absolutely essential to anti-capitalist work today. And this, for me, these work on the level of what Maria Mies would call struggle concepts, and so they're open and they're tools. They have to be used. And so some of the things that Midnight Notes has given us, in no particular order. Well, actually, the most important, I think, is something that Craig said again, is a class compositional analysis. A compositional analysis that is able to deal with the changing power relations of the working class and capital. And so class composition, class decomposition, and class recomposition. And alongside these concepts, absolutely filling them with a sense of class hierarchies. And so a sense of class that's absolutely, it's full and potent and invested with its a sense of race and certainly patriarchy and all the complex ways in which our class has to deal with our own hierarchies. And I think that's been an important thing, not just sort of do a compositional analysis, what sector of the class is moving, in what ways, and things like that, but also of conceiving the entire class together and beginning to understand its powers as based on its commonalities, but also the hierarchies that fissure it. So I think that's an absolutely important element that's been throughout all of the Midnight Notes material. Other related concepts are the manifold of work. The sense of class deals that John mentioned earlier, the planetary work machine, the idea of the political methodology of reading the struggles, which I think is absolutely indispensable today. An emphasis on autonomous struggles, self-activity, a real clear political notion of crisis, and also the opportunity, every opportunity in crisis for the working class to exit capital as well. And of course the enclosures in the commons, which is something we're dealing with. And I guess to cut myself off, I'll say part of how I come here is being invited to participate in an early meeting June 2008, which was meant to sort of, I guess, start the planning process of this Midnight Notes 30 celebration. And one of the things I heard to be on the agenda on that meeting was a real critical assessment of the tools that Midnight Notes has produced and whether they're relevant today, whether they say anything about contemporary reality. And part of what happened that weekend when we met was we kind of, I think, took that question as an assumption. Of course, obviously, these are relevant tools, because immediately what we did is we unfolded a 10-foot long scroll, which I still have, which you still have. I wish you brought it. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, there were 30, 40 of us sitting around this 10-foot long butcher block piece of paper and scribbling, and Francesca wrote all these notes on there. We were all just shouting out all these different areas in which these tools needed to be applied to our contemporary situation, right? And I think that's very strong validation for not only are these tools relevant, but as struggle concepts, they need to be used. That's the only way of testing whether they're relevant or not. And so all the different greatest hits that I reminded us of, I think these are concepts, as George said, of phenomenon. These are concepts that need to be bended until they're broken. And I think there's a long bending process before any of these concepts are broken. And so anyway, there's certain directions I'd like to go in all this, but I guess we can talk about those things at other moments where specter is haunting capitalism, but I guess now's not the time to speculate about next steps. So I'll leave it at that.
So I was really happy and excited when George asked me to speak on this panel. A lot because I don't think it's unimportant that I am basically a second generation Midnight Notes friend. Literally, so like I remember being very tiny and going to visit Monty and Shelley in Boston. I knew the younger Kafensis who just walked in San Francisco before I knew the senior Kafensis. And so when I got older and I started to realize all of these amazing things that had been written by these people, that I came to know more of them and more of them, like that experience is really important, and I don't think a lot of us get that in our lives, and I feel like it's happening maybe more and more now. But So Danielle mentioned at the beginning of the day that she stole Caliban and the Witch from me. And I actually have a history of people stealing Midnight Notes and Midnight Notes Friends' works from me. So when I was in college, my undergraduate, my dad gave me Midnight Oil, and my friend stole it when he was working on a thing about the energy crisis at this museum. So I went back home and I stole my dad's copy. And you know, before I started really working through it, I called my dad and I was like, you know, what are these people about? And he was like, you know, it's like about worker struggles, but he was like riding his bike or something like that. So it's like, call your mother. So I called my mom, and she said, the sort of guiding perspective of the Midnight Notes group is that it's the worker struggles that create transformations in capitalist society, that is like the genesis of the things that we see in the history that we've experienced, and it's not in like the internal like logical functionings of capital. And so she expressed this as she was, you know, close to the group Root and Branch in the Bay Area, who probably sat on the other side of that equation, and had a more of a political economic approach to the issue of the history of capitalist development, stuff like that. So that's just kind of like how I began into it, and I sort of I'm going to come back to that division in a minute. So I was like, but when she told me that, when it was like working class struggle is the thing that motivates developments, and I wanted to take really quick, it's zero work. Just like, you know, a very brief epitomization of that position, which is that our class analysis proceeds from the viewpoint of the working class as a class relation. Capital is first of all a power struggle. Capital's flaws are not internal to it, and nor is the crisis. They are determined by the dynamics of working class struggle. So I was like, well, of course, working class only exists in capitalism. Like, working class is the relationship between labor and capital. So really I found the notion that you had to argue for the working class as the originator of struggle to be really difficult to understand. So I'm like, how could that not be the case? Like, even the people arguing the side of the capitalist systematic, you know, should, like, that still means automatically that it is the working class, because capital is the relationship between working class and labor, and capital, between labor and capital. So first of all, I think it's interesting that when I was told about this division, like, I found it hard to wrap my mind around, and I'd be curious about other younger people how they relate to that. So maybe I'll skip this.